Well, welcome to another coffee break, and this time I wanted to just look at the whole subject of working with the poor. Scripture shouts that at us, both in Isaiah 58, the command is for God's people to have a corporate culture amongst them that remembers the poor. We also find in Acts, at a time of great expansion, and also in the epistles, the cry to remember the poor in the context of church planting and expansion and seeing many people come to know the Lord. It's one of those things that can drop off the agenda quite easily because we get caught up in the busyness of other things. But if we're genuinely going to have a culture in church life and in kingdom aspirations as God's people, we've got to maintain and develop a heart for working with the poor. Now, who are the poor? Well, I think personally for me, I would use the term to describe anyone who's disempowered in any way. So in other words, people who no longer have choices that perhaps they should have. So that can be economically, it can be socially, it can be educationally, it can be any kind of emotionally. It can be things where either through no fault of their own or through their own lifestyles, people have brought themselves into a position where they no longer have choices, where they are imprisoned, they are hemmed in a situation that they cannot break free from no matter what they do. Now, to those people, I believe Jesus would draw our attention that we must work with them. We must give of ourselves to alleviate where we can within, as far as it affects us, as far as we're able to affect those who are caught in that way. Now, also Jesus did say that the poor we would have with us always. So this is a long-term strategy. It's not something that we should rush out tomorrow and burn ourselves out in. It's got to be a long-term. In some ways, it has to be almost a mechanical and well thought through, well built road that we build into local church life and into kingdom development. We've got to think through the pathways we're creating. It's not just a case of running out and throwing money at anything that looks as if it needs it. We've got to think carefully about that. Certainly when churches are being planted, they can become overwhelmed if they put too much energy too quickly into projects working with the poor, because it does require a lot of high energy and high maintenance. But having said that, to build an infrastructure intentionally is something I think anyone in leadership must have on their strategic radar right from the beginning. Now, we see that in Paul's life, that he personally gave attention to collecting and delivering an offering for the poor. So it went in his diary as well as in his head. He gave deliberate time that he could have been doing other things to doing that, because he realized that was something that was actually a reflection of Jesus' heart. And after all, Paul was a servant of Christ, as indeed we all are. So we're to do his bidding, not perhaps what we might think is the best use of our time. It's to hear what he wants and then reflect that in our actions and attitudes and values. So there is this sense of Paul giving time to that in amongst the sphere of churches that he worked in. So I think there's great clout that can be had when you get 50 or so churches that are working together under an apostolic leadership, where they can really focus their corporate attention, not exclusively on one thing, because we've all got certain things locally we need to give to, but where we can really make an impact to alleviate and bring empowerment so that people have choices and have a pathway out of their poverty. I think that's a fantastic thing, and certainly within the sphere that I'm involved in, we are looking to do that and create that sort of thing. But also it's about being generous to those not in our particular sphere. So we have great working partnerships with, for example, Edward Buria in Kenya, and we're standing alongside Edward's vision for empowerment of people through business creation. And it's been a thrill to see fish farming, beekeeping, stores, kerosene stores, general stores, all kinds of little micro enterprises enabled to be started just with a relatively small seed fund. And it's an amazing thing to feel that you're able to give to people who can then, through their own hard work and their own diligence, lift themselves out of poverty by making godly choices for themselves. In actual fact, giving money just as handouts is not often the way to really alleviate the long-term problem. It's about creating an infrastructure so that people have a pathway for themselves through their own godliness and their own sense of responsibility under God, finding a way through. So I think that's going to become an important thing for us, certainly within Relational Mission, and we're launching a new Pathways Out of Poverty initiative more broadly this Christmas. And so watch for that. But I just wanted to share that just as a way of stimulating perhaps thought in your local church or in the sphere that you're working in, for us to do that. On a personal basis, when it comes to personal involvement in caring for the poor, I think it's something that every leader needs to be have in mind, that they need to be not only thinking corporately about the poor, but also personally about being available for God to use whenever He wants to. Certainly when I pray the prayer, Lord, give me my daily bread, I'm praying, thinking, Lord, I want you to give me not only enough for my needs, but enough so that I can be generous on every occasion. So I think that's part of having daily bread. So there's a few thoughts for you just to be pondering over, and certainly we need to keep praying that God will help us to alleviate poverty. What's certainly true, whatever you sow, you reap, and sometimes it can feel like hard work giving into working with the poor. It can feel like very fruitless, but actually these are kingdom things, and sometimes God's kingdom doesn't always look the way we might want fruitfulness to imagine to look in our own world. So let's keep working with the poor and seeing the joy of many people find a pathway out of poverty.